Hi, welcome to another exciting conversation of change with Climate Asia. Today, our guest speaker is Vishal Kumar from Waste Warriors. Vishal is a dynamic and visionary leader at the forefront of India's waste management revolution. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Waste Warriors, a not-for-profit startup with the goal of reducing plastic waste from eco-sensitive areas. A very warm welcome to you, Vishal, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Davishna, for having me, and very happy to be part of this conversation.
We'll dive right into the questions. Vishal, could you please share your journey that kindled your commitment to waste management and started you towards your current position?
Thank you so much, Davishna, for asking that. And I think it's a question I'm never tired of answering because I've seen, the transformation that happened in my own journey. I was never an environmentalist to begin with. In fact, I was, if at all, at the other extreme. I remember distinctly as a young adult littering waste on the streets, with no regard to its impact. So as I entered undergrad, and I used to travel on these very long train journeys from, Chennai in South India, which is my hometown, to Varanasi, which is where I did my undergrad. So on these train journeys, I used to spend a lot of time looking outside at the ever-changing landscape from South India to North India. But one thing that remained constant was this continuous, never-ending trail of trash on the railway tracks. So that had an impact on me, as a young student. And when I got an opportunity to participate in a competition organized by IIT Bombay, this was an environmental competition where we had to do some cleanup drives, we had to do certain initiatives within our own campus. And I thought this was a really nice way to be part of something. And because I was not so much into dance or theater or any of those cultural activities, so I found that this is a good way for me to express myself. And as I started participating in those in the competition, I realized how big the problem is and how urgent there is a need for solutions. And it was by chance that I ended up there in that competition. And I watched a particular video called The Story of Stuff. This one video, it's about a 20-minute video, taught me more than my 5 years of engineering. There's so many elements in that video that teach you about, externalized costs in the environment, the massive overconsumption that's happening in the world, the toxicity that's there in the environment. And it got me thinking that, in the last 50 years, we've gotten to this stage. What's going to happen in the next 50 years of my own lifetime? And do I want to be part of the problem or do I want to be part of the solution? So that thought was kind of triggered very early on. And as a result, I started the Green Club at IIT BHU. I did multiple environmental initiatives for water consumption, food waste, energy, multiple initiatives within campus. And as I was about to graduate, then I had to take a call between, taking up a corporate career, which is what you get on campus, versus exploring this uncharted territory of, environmental sector, which was, not so popular back then as it is now with the, whole climate change narrative that has been built up. So I think, it was by chance that I got into this and I took the first step. And therefore, I always insist that don't wait till it becomes perfect. Like just you take the first step on the journey and gradually it will take you to where you need to go. So that's something that I've seen happen in myself and countless other people that I encounter on a regular basis.
It's so warming to hear that you got something out of the cleanup drives, because I usually hear a lot of students try and stay away from it, or, it's something that they have to do, but are not very keen to. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. As we all know, plastic pollution has become like a worldwide concern, capturing the attention of people from across the globe. Considering the substantial efforts undertaken by Waste Warriors, could you elaborate a little bit more on the primary initiatives that you're involved with at the organization?
Absolutely. So ocean plastic pollution has garnered a lot of international attention over the last, 5-6 years, and millions of dollars of funding have gone into trying to solve for ocean plastic pollution. But mountain plastic pollution has not received the same recognition because the waste ends up in the rivers and oceans from land and starts from the mountains. So, from what we've seen across the entire Himalayan region, Indian Himalayan region, most people are either dumping their waste in the forest, water bodies, or they're burning their waste. That's the only way people in the Himalayan region know how to manage their waste. There's an estimate that about 8.4 million metric tons of waste is generated in this landscape, and a conservative estimate is that over 60% of that is being dumped and burned in the open. So that's a huge volume of about one truck of waste every 5 minutes is being dumped and burnt in the Himalayan region, right? Which is massive, and it's an eco-sensitive area. There's so much biodiversity in that landscape. You have a lot of water sources that's supplied to over 2 billion people across the world. So it's a very significant landscape and region that we work in, but most people don't realize that, and they're ending up dumping and burning their waste. So our interventions are focused on catalyzing systemic change by empowering the local government to do their jobs better, by empowering local communities to be part of the solution, by empowering local entrepreneurs to offer waste collection services and manage it in a responsible manner, as well as an economically viable manner. And finally, we address some research and policy gaps pertaining to waste management in the Himalayan region. So these are four broad objectives of Waste Warriors. And our flagship intervention is called the Zero Waste Program, in which we engage with the local village administration. We help them set up bylaws at the local village level in open village meetings. Now, these bylaws entail how the village plans to set up waste management systems. What is the user fees it will charge to every household? Who's the monitoring committee, like a Swachhta Samiti? So that committee gets formed. A separate bank account for that gets opened in the village level. A waste bank needs to be allocated, which is where the waste can be segregated. So all of these fundamental systems are put in place at a village level. Then we work with the district administration to set up infrastructure for waste processing. And then we identify local entrepreneurs, especially women, who will offer waste collection and segregation as a service to these households. And we do a lot of awareness initiatives with the households to segregate their waste into wet and dry, and to pay a user fees for waste management. So these are all the different types of interventions that we do, so that at a local level, at a grassroots level, you're able to set up waste management systems. So this is our flagship intervention, which includes awareness, operations, infrastructure setup, economic viability of the local entrepreneur, and making sure that the whole system functions. So that's the broad flagship program that we do. In addition to this, we do a couple of additional interventions, which is we engage with youth in these areas to kind of be part of the climate action movement, and we engage with tourists, how they can contribute a little bit of their time and energy every time they travel to leave that tourist place cleaner than they found it. So that's another initiative that we do with tourists. So these are two specific interventions, but what I shared earlier is the flagship program.
And just a follow-up question to that, what has your experience been with working with the individuals? Are they receptive to this, or do they feel like, oh, it's the government's responsibility?
I think it's 50-50. So the local governments are interested in setting up systems, because we work across various range of departments, from tourism department, forest department, Panchayati Raj department, Swachh Bharat Mission, rural development department. Then it also some with agriculture, horticulture, some work with them. Then it goes to state, district, block, and Gram Panchayat level. So you see it's a whole matrix of stakeholders, and then administrative and political stakeholders as well. You need to work with the MLA, the Vidayat, all of them. So you're engaging with a broad range of stakeholders, and you're trying to bring all of them on the same page.
Could you also expand upon the ongoing research endeavor that Waste Warriors is presently engaged in partnership with the academic institutions?
Right. So research and advocacy is a new vertical that we recently launched as a part of our 10th anniversary celebration. So we've done few small interventions, but one big project that we're doing right now is on externalized accounting of sachets. So this means that all the sachet waste that you get, like your shampoo sachet, your really small flexible packaging that you get in every shop, in India. So what is the externalized cost of those sachets? externalized costs which are not factored in the economic cost of the product, which means the social cost and the environmental cost of collection, of mismanagement, of the human health cost, the social impact cost of the waste. So this is a research project that we are just kicking off now, and we're doing this. We're in the process of finalizing an academic partner for this. Most likely by next week, we will be finalizing the academic partner. We've received interest from some IIMs, some tier one institutions, and some other specialized institutions on environmental accounting. So we're looking at finalizing an academic partner next week, and then launch the project next month onwards.
That sounds very interesting, Vishal. And I'm sure with the number of tourists that the mountains get, I'm sure a lot of them carry these very handy sachets. So looking forward to getting to know what the reports say. So you highlighted the mounting water crisis in the Himalayan region in one of your articles. How has witnessing the waste challenges impact in this delicate ecosystem shaped your perspective in the broader water crisis?
Right. So as I was sharing earlier, the Himalayan region is home to is a source of water for many rivers, and it feeds I think over 2 billion people across the world. So polluting the river right at its source through either toxins that are used in agriculture or waste that gets dumped and burnt in that region is going to have a significant negative impact, because it's going to accumulate as it passes through in the food chain as well. Through the wildlife in the food, in the marine ecosystem. But water also ends up taking waste very deep into the forest. In areas where there'd be no human habitat, but even there you would end up, you'd find large amounts of waste, because it's been washed away from hillsides by water during monsoons, into these very remote parts of the forest. So water obviously gets contaminated, but also there's microplastics in water, which is, a big problem now that we know most brands of water that we consume, most sources of water that are there in the world have been contaminated by microplastics. And there's literally no way we can remove that microplastics from the water. So imagine, in the last 50 years, there's now every source of water in the world has been contaminated with microplastics. So what's going to happen in the future? And water is the most basic thing that we all need to live. And we are contaminating it with microplastics, which is not being measured right now. Only global temperatures are being measured, right? We're measuring global temperatures because for us, climate change is 1.5 degrees. But what about all the microplastics and nanoplastics which are there in the water, in air, and they're there everywhere within our human bodies. And they're going to have very long-term negative repercussions for all of us if we don't take corrective measures right now.
Very rightfully said. So based on your experience, what are some of the key factors that individuals and communities that you work with and world over should bear in mind to prevent this crisis and ensure a more sustainable future?
There's a lot of actions we can take as individuals, because unlike a lot of other social and environmental problems for which we may not be directly responsible, we may not be directly causing those problems in the world, but we know that those problems are there. Waste is one specific problem that every person in the world contributes to, no matter your economic status, no matter where you live, but everybody contributes, which means everybody has an opportunity to be part of the solution. There are several things we can do at our individual level in terms of reduction of waste, not consuming things in packaged, not consuming packaged foods as much as possible. Carrying our simple things like carrying a bag every time we travel, carrying our own water bottles, composting our waste is something that we can do, which has very significant impacts. But it's not enough. Individual actions are not enough. It's good and we must do it. But I think as individuals, we need to be more sensitive to, and also to call out and demand for systemic change. We cannot be sitting complacently that, oh, my street is clean, so I can be okay, because it's getting dumped in somebody else's street. that when it gets burnt, it's going to come into my house because water, and air, they know no boundaries. So it's going to impact my child. My child could be impacted with, cancer because of waste burning that's happening, somewhere 50 kilometers from here. So we can't just be bystanders to the problem as individuals. I think we have to be, demanding for solutions for systemic change on various fronts, and how we choose our careers, because our careers are, they speak louder than anything else that we are, that our voice can ever speak, because you're dedicating half your life to that. And how you choose your career, are you choosing your career to be part of the problem, or are you trying to use your career to be part of the solution? That's an individual choice, right? Which comes with its consequences, but it's a choice. So it's not limited to how we consume, it's how we make decisions, what kind of careers we choose, what kind of people we, what kind of places we go to. So everything, I think, if you're traveling to Corbett Tiger Reserve, you have to be sensitive to that local ecology. You cannot expect the same luxurious hotel with the same, facilities like a five-star hotel in Delhi, right? You have to be cognizant. So I think individuals have a big role to play in how they demand for systemic change and systemic solutions.
Very rightfully said about many of us being bystanders and being complacent, in our day-to-day lives. So how do you approach raising awareness and promoting responsible behavior in vulnerable areas, given the challenge of interacting with tourists, especially in the places that you work in?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important aspects of our work, raising awareness, not in general, not raising awareness on climate change. The climate change is happening in the world, 1.5 degrees, we're going to crash, because that is irrelevant for the local communities, right? For the marginalized communities which are living on mountain areas, what's happening at a global scale doesn't really make much of a difference. We need to contextualize that and break that down for them in terms of what it means for them. And I think, even the IPCC report talks about how coastal communities and mountain communities are very vulnerable to the impact of climate change, because they are directly exposed, right? Even just this season, like the amount of rainfall that's happened in the mountains has really washed away the agricultural fields. It's washed away all the, flowering of the fruits that, were supposed to happen after the season. But it's led to loss of livelihoods for a lot of these people. And then there's no other option. They have no other livelihood mechanism. So they're very, very exposed to the environment, very much dependent on the environment. And when that environment changes, right, it really impacts how they live their life. So our work, while it's not at a very high level in terms of, talking about climate, but it's very specific, talking about waste and how it impacts them on a regular basis, how their cattle is affected by, waste that gets burned, how their kids' health could be affected when, waste is burned, how the agricultural yield gets impacted when waste, is in the soil because it washes away into the soil as well. So we talk about all of these different aspects in a language that they understand through art, through the medium of art. We use a lot of wall murals, we do a lot of space transformations, we do a lot of chai pe charchas, discussions with the community on these important aspects. We do nukkad nataks, we get children to perform. We have this play called Kachravan. So kids come together and do a play called, this Kachravan, where they talk about the impacts of waste and how it has very long-term consequences. So we use a wide range of triggers for different types of target audiences, especially local, because each of them have different types of, triggers that work for them. Women have something different that works for them. Children have something different that works for them. So our awareness content is very curated for each of them. Tourists are a different element altogether, because they are, kind of floating population. They're not based in those areas. So for tourists, it's more like mass campaigns that we do. Like, we do a skip the straw campaign. We do some art installations with tourists. We involve them and we do artwork with tourists. We do some cleanup drives for the tourists, so that every time you travel, you're participating in a cleanup drive, you're contributing to the place.
So just a follow-up question to that, but have the locals ever sort of said that, they are vulnerable to the waste that is not actually their fault?
Yes. So a lot of times villagers, they tell us कि हमारे गांव में तो कूड़ा ही नहीं है. we don't generate waste in our house, in our villages. So village waste is not our problem. It's only the tourists which is the problem. We are not generating the waste at all. So when we collected waste from the villages, non-tourist villages, so where no tourist ever comes, we collected waste from that village for about 6 months. And when we transported that waste from two villages, the villagers were shocked कि हमारे गांव में इतना कूड़ा 5 tons of waste was transported from just two remote high altitude villages. Now these are villages at about 8,000 feet, 8,000, 9,000 feet altitude, just about 250, 300 households. So not even a lot of households, but they generated 5 tons of waste in 6 months, right? And this is just non-biodegradable waste. So when they saw this huge truck of waste going, and they were so shocked कि हमारे गांव का कूड़ा है, हमें पता ही नहीं था, that we generate so much trash in our own village. So that kind of was a transition point for them, that they understood, yes, villagers are also contributing to the problem, but they also realized that the hotels, the tourism industry generates far more waste than the households in the villages do. But they also are very courteous in that sense, because for everybody in the hills, tourists are atithi, they are guests. So they would never blame the guests per se, because that's also a source of income for them. But they do have that feeling that they generate more waste and than us villagers.
You mentioned working with women, and so how do you see the role of women in contributing to environmental preservation?
Yeah, I think I'll just share a small story with you. I think it's very powerful in terms of how these women have been able to impact that region, and also everybody else, everybody who comes in contact with the work they do. So in the outskirts of Corbett Tiger Reserve landscape, there are lots of villages there. So we work in about 10 villages in the outskirts of the Tiger Reserve. And we have this model there called the Paryavaran Sakhi model, where we have women who are from the villages where we operate, who've come together to form this group, about 25 such women. Now, these are women from both upper caste and lower caste, educated and uneducated. Some of these women are very much well-to-do. They have like big homes, own property, and some of them are needy women. They've come together as a group, and these women offer waste collection services to these households. So they drive their own vehicle, a battery-operated vehicle. So they drive their own vehicle. They go door to door. They collect segregated dry waste, and they charge a user fee to the household every month. And the household pays them a fee for waste collection. They segregate the waste at a waste bank in the village into multiple categories of paper, plastic, metal, glass. And then they sell the waste to local, scrap dealers and also aggregators to be able to generate revenue from that waste. So they're generating revenue from households as user fees. They're generating revenue from selling the recyclables to downstream recycling partners. And they're doing all of this in a very self-motivated manner. They work, as such a coherent group, and they've overcome so many challenges in their homes. A lot of them used to tell us initially, that their chacha or their bade papa is like a pujari in the family, and this, bahu of the house is doing kachre ka kaam. So, a lot of social stigma, taboo, these women had to overcome to be able to actually do this kind of work, and also to be able to do it together. It's not like upper caste can't do this or shouldn't do this. Be it upper caste or lower caste, it doesn't matter. It's all, it's a work that all of us need to be involved in, and there should be no shame in doing that. But for these women to break those social barriers and norms, to do this kind of work, and to face humiliation on a daily basis. So when they go to these villages, people call them kudewala, people call them, all kinds of mean names they call them. But in spite of all these challenges, to keep doing this work with so much love, so much passion, with so much energy, and they tell us कि, पता नहीं Sunday क्यों आ जाता है, हमें तो घर पे नहीं रहना, we don't want to go home, we want to do this kind of work, we love what we do. So there's some kind of energy that they've created for themselves, and it's very inspiring for all of us when we hear their stories of these women. So now the local government has taken cognizance of that. Now they want to scale up this model in that entire district, right? So it would not have happened if we were doing that collection. It was because this group of women from that village who came together, they have a strong voice now. They have an identity and agency as Paryavaran Sakhis, and they're no longer known as, iski bahu ya uski beti, they have an identity of their own, and they're generating livelihood from it, and they're solving the problem of waste in a biodiversity, sensitive area like the Corbett Tiger Reserve. So there's cross-sectoral impact of the work that they're doing, and I think it is these women and people and like them who can actually create a big difference on the ground, because they can fight whatever vested interest there would be locally as a group, because there will be a lot of vested interest, when money comes in, when, these kind of areas becomes more tricky to operate in. But the women, because of all the grassroots work that they have done, are very well placed to actually scale up that effort.
That sounds very inspiring, Vishal. I think solutions that come right from the community itself are always inspiring. So what advice do you have for people who would like to join the sustainable waste management sector? And what skills and talents should they be focusing on?
Right. I think the first and foremost important aspect, I think, is intent. Having the clarity of intent of why they want to do this. Do they really want to do this? Understanding their triggers, understanding themselves, I think is very important, because the journey of working on a problem like waste can be overwhelming, to be honest, because the problem is growing much faster than the scale of solutions. You're going to face barriers at every step. You're going to take some good steps with the right intent, but there will be many people trying to push you back 2 steps. So it's a very, this problem is overwhelming, but therefore the satisfaction of developing solutions is also, significant. So I think intent is one of the most important things, that, you have to be clear why you're doing this. And the sector right now is still at a no longer a nascent stage, but it's still not fully mature. It's still at a growing stage, right? The sector. About 5-6 years ago, it would have been a very nascent stage. The sector was just starting to be built about 6-7 years ago. But now there are a lot of players, a lot of for-profit companies, non-for-profits, impact organizations that are working in waste across most of the region. So no matter what skills they have, I think all skills are needed for the sector. So if you're a skilled professional, we have people from the corporate world with 15 years, 20 years, 25 years of experience in their specific field of interest who are looking to transition to the waste management sector. And we've been able to hire them and successfully integrated many of them. And there are many young people who are just out of college, a few years of experience, may not have necessarily experience in the waste management sector, but they may have specific skill for, say, communications or design or project management, because those skills are easily transferable to this work that we are doing. So the skills can be learned on the job, the technical aspects with respect to waste management, but having a specific field of interest, either storytelling, communications, or project management, community engagement, government engagement, infrastructure, operations, depending on what your interests are, I think there's enough and more room for all skills and talents right now. The intent has to be there, and at some point, some level of personal sacrifice might also be required, especially if you're working in remote areas, eco-sensitive areas, because it may not be profitable to do so. So the salary compensations will not necessarily be commensurate to, or comparable to the corporate sector.
Thank you so much, Vishal, for that very candid answer. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely speaking to you. Really appreciate you answering all our questions and giving us an insight of what it's like up in the mountains. And we wish Waste Warriors all the best.
Thank you so much, Davishna, and apologies for all the challenges we had with the tech, but it was lovely speaking to you, and I look forward to staying in touch with Climate Asia.
Thank you so much.